Yo, it's your boy Logos, and today I'm gonna be at the Thomas Sowell talk about why resource-rich Russia could never catch up with the rest. Seems like a very interesting topic with the increase of Marxist ideologies that's going on nowadays, especially in the West and Western colleges. I think it's very sad and I don't know, pathetic when you think about the amount of people that believing in Marxism, when we have all this evidence and bodies and economics of why communism doesn't exist. And oftentimes when you look through history, the only reason communism could last as long as it did was through Western support, through capitalist money. Oftentimes they had capitalist investors in these communist countries, and when those capitalist investors would come in and take over industry, those industries was more profitable and more efficient. But people don't want to talk about that stuff nowadays when they keep saying they want to overthrow the system, or the system is racist, or capitalism is racist. It's very simple minded thinking, in my opinion, but these people rarely have any understanding of history or the different dynamics that led to the world we live in today. But let's get into it.
Two Russian-dominated multinational empires succeeded one another on the same territory, the first being called candidly the Russian Empire, and the second the Soviet Union. Geographically, Russia is in some ways like the rest of Eastern Europe, but its natural resource endowment is far richer. Like some other Slavic lands, Russia has vast plains, indeed the largest area of level land in the world, and the Ural Mountains, which mark the boundary between Europe and Asia, are modest in height, like the mountains of the rest of Eastern Europe. The sheer physical size of the Russian Empire and of the Soviet Union that succeeded it has had enormous consequences. The largest country in the world, the Soviet Union was more than twice the size of the United States and larger than the entire continent of South America. The European portion of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics constituted more than half of all Europe, even though it was only 1/4 of the total land area of the USSR. Such vast regions encompassed a wide variety of geographic and climatic environments and great natural resources, but the distances involved created high transportation costs, especially since most of these resources, including waterways, were in the Asian portion of the country, while most of the population was in the European portion. A 1977 study, for example, showed that 90% of the energy resources of the Soviet Union were east of the Urals, while nearly 80% of the country's energy requirements were in the European part of the USSR. While there are many rivers in Russia, containing altogether 1/10 of the total river flow in the world, the practical economic value of these rivers is limited, and the largest are by no means the most economically important. Many Russian rivers flow northward into the Arctic Ocean, or flow elsewhere into inland seas, rather than serving as outlets to the great ocean trade routes of the world. More than 3/5 of their drainage is into the Arctic Ocean. Russia's most famous river, the Volga, is by no means its largest. The Yenisei and the Lena each carries more than twice as much water, but the Volga's importance derives from the fact that it flows through regions of Russia containing 3/4 of the country's population and 4/5 of its industry and farmland. It is the longest river in Europe. Not surprisingly, the Volga has carried more shipping tonnage than any other Russian river or any river in the former Soviet Union. Russian rivers are often frozen for months each winter, reducing their economic significance still further. Even the role of the Volga is reduced by the fact that it typically freezes before December in the vicinity of Moscow and remains frozen until mid-April.
And this whole issue with Russia not having access to a warm water port, a port that doesn't freeze over in the winter, has led to conflicts and political disputes for what, almost 200 years now. From my memory, since Peter the Great, he recognized the importance of a warm water port for Russia, and he sought to get that. Even still today in the Soviet Union, oh, I'm sorry, the Russian Confederation or whatever they call it now. But this whole war in Ukraine, I'm pretty sure that port that's in around southern Ukraine or southern Russia has a lot to do with this whole conflict. And regardless of this ends peacefully and Ukraine winning or Russia winning, I highly doubt Russia's going to be willing to give up that port, even if they get pushed back so far that I don't know Vladimir Putin is risking losing his presidency. I think he will hold on to that port as long as he can because it's so valuable to Russia. It's been a constant thorn in their side for what, generations now.
At its southern end, the Volga flows into an inland sea, the Caspian Sea, like so many other Russian rivers. In natural resources, Russia stands out among the nations of Eastern Europe and of the world. In addition to having the world's largest reserves of iron ore and 1/5 of all the forested land in the world, the manganese deposits of the Soviet Union have been estimated to exceed those of every other nation except South Africa, and its actual manganese production in 1980 exceeded that of any other nation by at least double. The Soviet Union also led all nations in oil production for many years, producing from 10 to 20% of total world output. It has also had 1/3 of the world's natural gas reserves and was for many years the world's leading producer of nickel. The USSR was self-sufficient in virtually all natural resources and exported substantial amounts of gold and diamonds. As of 1978, the USSR supplied nearly half of the industrial diamonds in the world. Yet all this natural abundance did not translate into a high standard of living for the Russian people or for the other peoples of the Russian Empire, the Soviet Union, or the Commonwealth of Independent States which succeeded them. Partly this reflected the high costs of extraction and transportation in a vast country without a network of waterways connecting the resources with the population centers. The enormously costly Trans-Siberian Railroad was built in hopes of making up for the lack of natural transportation routes between the resources in Asiatic Russia and the industry and population centers of European Russia. For much of the country's history, there was also a lack of human capital among a largely illiterate population. As late as 1897, only 21% of the population of the Russian Empire was literate. But even after education spread and an abundance of scientists and engineers were trained during the communist era, the government's emphasis on military uses of its resources kept living standards low. However, the de-emphasis of the military in the post-Soviet era did not prevent the continued, and sometimes worsening, poverty in the region, a fact which highlighted the political and legal obstacles to economic development, which may well have played a major role all along in the country's backwardness under czars, commissars, and then democratically elected governments.
Oftentimes you hear about, and especially military history, the importance of geography and location in the field of battle because that dictates so much stuff like communications, having connections between your people, or the type of land that you have to defend. Russia has many positives and negatives. Who knows, and maybe 100 years from now, if the North Pole and Southern Poles really melt, Russia will probably be the most powerful nation on the planet because it has so many warm or newly warm water ports, in addition to all of the resources that they always had. But now, when it's warmer, people can go out to Siberia and they could use that land for more percentage of the population. Not to mention, people will immigrate to Russia from other places around the world if flooding does commence. So Russia does have a lot of stuff going against it, but like many things in life, just because something going against you now doesn't mean it always will be. Sometimes you just have to endure, and hopefully when you do be in a time of power or a position of power, you don't exploit your position or exploit your people or your resources. I think it's very interesting how Thomas Sowell, the narrator, said that regardless of how much they exported in terms of minerals and other things that is very highly sought after in the Western world, the actual people of Russia wasn't living that well. That could be dealing with a lot of factors related to communism, but also geography and the difficulties with transportation and the upkeep costs when it comes to transporting those minerals across the country and across the world. People don't want to talk about this important type of stuff when you talk about uprooting the system, or overthrowing government, or saying this whole system is corrupt. I don't expect an easy, smooth transition. Even if there was, I don't expect this new system that they ever, I don't know, because they really ever say their actual plans. They never say that once we get rid of capitalism, we're going to do this. Once we get rid of capitalism, we're going to do that. They don't say how we're going to stop this cycle of repeating itself. because we've seen in every history book, or just vague memory and knowledge, that regardless of you having power in Russia or any country, you're open to exploitation by the government. Honestly, look at what some of the stuff that's happened over the past few years since COVID with Canada. That was a place that you could never imagine them shutting down bank accounts and doing those other stuff. But when you allow your government to get too powerful with no repercussions, it just happens. And I don't expect a capitalist country or a communistic country to make me immune for that. I expect the people that live within those countries to be knowledgeable about the history and knowledgeable about the politics that's actually going on. You can't expect the politician, no matter where they're from, or their gender, or what they say to you through a TV screen, or even in your face when they shake your hand, they can still be BSing you for your vote. That's why I don't support, I don't know, I don't support any drastic action. Most problems that we have in this country can be fixed, but it's not going to be happening overnight. You need to attack most of this stuff from multiple different angles and multiple different perspectives. You need to get experts on it, and those experts need to be unbiased. They don't need to be influenced by corporations that want them to give an exact result or answer in a study so they could get a contract from the government to push a product. Regardless of how you feel about certain, I don't know, diseases or corporations or anything like that, I think when you influence scientists or influence science to be biased, then it's unreliable. And if you want to have something to rely on, then you need to just look at all the data honestly. The data honestly. We rarely ever do that nowadays. It seems whether it's news or corporations or pharmaceutical companies, they're going to skew the results, and they're going to skew the corporations or government agencies like the FDA to make sure they can continue to push out their pills, products, whatever it may be. I don't think communism, capitalism, anarchism, anything at all is a key to perfect peace. I think just a combination of things and just being self-analytical, and honest about the situation we're in is the first step to take. And regardless of what system you choose, or how often or how many documents you write up that's supposed to protect the rights of the citizens, you're still gonna have people that try to take control of it because you don't know how they're gonna do it with power. And it's better to just be safe than, I don't know, worrying about your rights being taken away or your freedom of speech being taken away. Well, that's just me. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. It's your boy Logos, and I'll see you next time. Peace.